the Building Better Relationships Journal and Meditation. We created the Building Better Relationships Journal and Meditation so you can magnetize the better relationships you want and focus on the positive role that you have in creating a better life through your relationships. We are excited for you to discover the gold within you that can help you manifest the love we all crave. The Building Better Relationships Journal has coaching questions that help you listen to the truth of what you want and what helps you to be empowered in love. The Building Better Relationships meditation is designed to strengthen your heart's ability to be that change you wish to see in the world. Why not download it now and think of it as a gift to those you love? If you love journaling and meditation, this is for you. Welcome to Building Better Relationships at Home and at Work with Angela and Patti podcast. This is Patti, a leadership and work-life balance coach from Arizona, USA.
And this is Angela, love and relationship coach from Sydney, Australia. And we are building better relationships with you.
Sharing new perspectives on being heart-centered at home and at work.
So you can draw on your inner power to make your relationships and the world a better place to be around.
In this episode, Angela and Patti will be discussing a topic request from a listener: how to get along with your teenager. Hi, Angela. How's it going?
Hi, Patti. It's going great. Interesting topic.
Yes, a very interesting topic. So I was thinking about, let's self-reflect back to when we were teenagers. Yes, I know it was different back then, but we basically still want the same things, right?
Yeah.
What did you want from your parents? Understanding, someone to listen, unconditional love, being supported to pursue what you really want in life. What was it? Your teenager probably wants the same.
Yeah, instantly when you asked me to refer back to what I was experiencing or what I wanted, I had quite strong emotions as a teenager. And I didn't have what you were saying, all those things like being supported to pursue what you wanted in life, or I had a lot of food love, but I didn't have unconditional love. So, and I also, with the strong emotions, had depression and I had isolation. So a lot of teenagers can have moods and strong emotions. Some of them actually need a lot of support from their peers instead of their parents. So for a parent to get along with your teenager, you can actually be at war with them in a way because you're competing with some of the attention that they're getting from their peers, and you're not as important as anymore. And also you may not as a parent be able to understand the teenager and their needs. I know certainly in my teenage years, my parents, I knew they couldn't understand. And the last thing I thought was that they were going to understand. So I didn't go to them for support either. So that piece as well is when we become teenagers and our peers become more important or equally as important as our parents, sometimes that can create a disconnect for parents. So you don't have as much control over your teenager. And in one experience of mine, Patti, I had a client who their teenager became very involved with pursuing a romantic relationship, obsessed actually, and they started to see the parent as not able to help them with that because you need to go outside of the parent-child relationship to get romantic. So they were constantly seeking attention from another teenager or other teenagers until the point where they actually went too far and they actually got involved in a teenage romantic connection wasn't that romantic actually. And the parent had no idea, because the parent had lost sort of importance in the relationship and the teen wasn't confiding in the parent any longer. So when it went too far, that's when the parent got involved. So the boundaries being transgressed and the parent got involved. But the first thing that the parent did was say, I want you to know that you did nothing wrong. And in that moment, when they said that, I want you to know you did nothing wrong, the teenager actually melted, because they realised at that point that the parent was on their side. Whereas previously as a child, they were always in trouble, and not always in trouble, but when they got in trouble, the parent would say, don't do that, you did something wrong, you made a mistake, and that was very fearful for the child. But in that moment, the first thing the parent said was, I want you to know you did nothing wrong. The next thing they said was, tell me what happened. But because the parents had said you did nothing wrong, it really disarmed the teen. And from that moment on, the teen began to disclose more and more and more to the parent. And from that point, their whole relationship shifted, really made them feel completely able to be themselves.
So the parent actually asked questions and was concerned and was showing that unconditional love.
Right. They were demonstrating it. Yeah. Because that is unconditional love, isn't it? Sometimes I think we might get caught up in this idea that unconditional love is feeling happy or blissful, but actually it's demonstrating through a curiosity and a safe space, an interest in the child's universe or the teen's universe.
Yeah, it's showing that you love them and them knowing that you love them and that you're concerned with them and that you want the best for them.
And you may not understand their world, because once they go into teenage, they start to create their own universe, their own bedroom. They might wear clothes that identify them differently to what you knew them as a child. They want to be their own identity. They're still exploring that. So that's a very important phase of their journey.
Mhm.
And as a parent, you may feel you're an outsider at times, because that's an important part of their journey to start doing on their own. But in this case with my client, if that teen did not have their parents' unconditional love at that point, they would have gone into a really dark space. The child was already expressing a lot of tantrums or moods or anger, flashes of anger, and those disappeared. That's what was fascinating in that client situation, that the child actually stopped having the anger outbursts because the parent made the child completely free of any guilt or wrongdoing, and then said, tell me what happened. So I found this really interesting, Patti, that it was actually Gabor Mate who enlightened me to that some of the problems that we have with teenagers today, which are worse today than they were in the past, is that much more of our teens today are hanging out with their peers, their same age group, and creating bonds in that age group versus the bonds between parent and child. We're going to talk about that more later, what happens when teenagers only hang out with teenagers. But Gabor Mate actually says that that's a real problem in our society today that creates a sickness of isolation. And as we're recording this, we're going through the isolation due to the virus. So families have been forced to be together, and I think parent and teen relationships will also be exacerbated because families are being forced to be together, and they can also be enhanced. So one of the things to be aware of with teens is that once a child reaches the age of 12, they need to be started to be treated as an equal while they're also still your child. The parent and child dynamic changes once they get to the age of 12 to 18 years. So your child is learning how to become your equal, yet they're still very much in the child brain. So they're learning constantly how they're going to make these rules that will form the rest of their life. And in order to do that, they're going to break the rules. They're going to definitely make mistakes, certainly make mistakes, and they're going to learn how to cooperate with the rules of the whole group. So that's going to be an awkward process for any human being. Some teenagers don't have any troubles, but a lot of them are going to have to understand things that they weren't forced to understand before the age of 12. So the problem with relating to your teen as a parent becomes, how do you become their equal when you're still somewhat in charge of the relationship? So we came up with the word, Patti and I came up with the word mentor. So you mentor your child or teen, and you treat them with equal respect, and you're mentoring them to become a healthy adult, to be part of society, and to be an equal contributing member of society. So as an equal contributing member of society, you actually have responsibilities, and there are boundaries to your behaviour, and those boundaries will be created specifically for your family unit. So within your family, you're going to have boundaries that are necessary, which could be doing certain chores or looking after members of the family. And there will be consequences if those boundaries are not met. And everybody needs to know what's acceptable and not acceptable.
Right. And once those boundaries are established, and if those boundaries are broken, there are consequences, and those consequences are followed through. You don't ease up on the consequences. You actually follow through on them, and you make the child or teenager responsible. If they break a boundary and you say, okay, I'm taking away your online gaming for a week, you can't get online and play games for a week because you didn't follow what the family unit has talked about with the boundaries and the consequences, and you don't give in. And they will learn how to be accountable if you follow the family unit's guidelines as a family.
Yeah, and it's very different in the teen years now with enforcing these boundaries and responsibilities of the teen as well. Giving them some responsibility for the family is really important. In India, where I did my training on healing relationships, they looked at from the age of 0 to 6 that you treat the child as a king who is able to have access to unconditional everything, especially your love, but also in their needs being met. From the years of 7 to 12, you start to treat them as a prince or princess, where they start to learn from 7 to 12 years or even 6, what are some things that I can start being responsible for? And the consequences may not be so strict or so harsh. But once they start to get from 12 to 18, those years are key to them learning that if I transgress a responsibility or a boundary is not upheld, there is a consequence. So, for example, from 12 to 18, they may be responsible for a younger sibling. And if they don't look out for the younger sibling, that sibling can get hurt, or that sibling can feel neglected. And that's really important, because that's those years between 12 to 18, they're no longer a prince or princess. They're an equal to you. They're not going to get it right. They need to make mistakes, but to learn through a loving way how to arise above those mistakes. So this is really important. The next piece about how we think about teenagers is really important, because this is what happened to me. And it's not saying that my parents were bad, but a lot of the times my mum was disappointed with her own life. So she would be disappointed in me, for example, if I didn't take in the washing. I remember she would come home And you see the clothes. In Australia, we hang the clothes outside on the line to dry. And we still do that. We're not a big dryer type of community here because the electricity is too expensive. And I can never to this day, my mum's passed on, but I still remember her disregard of me when she'd come home after working all day and the clothes were still on the line. And it was really disheartening because you can imagine the next time I'd have to be told to go out and take the clothes in, I'd be resentful because my mum was like, oh, you didn't take out the clothes in. So I'd be really resentful the next time. And that accumulates to a feeling of I'm disappointing to my mum. So whenever you think these disappointing thoughts actually do affect your loved ones, and it's really important to not be disappointed in your teenager. So one thing you can do, because it is really frustrating as a parent when our teens don't do the chores that we require and ask them to do, because we're doing a lot for them already and we're only just asking them to take in the clothes, right? So what you can say is, look, I love you, but I really don't like your behavior. And it's a simple way to perhaps get out some of your frustration, but reinforce that you love them, but I don't like your behavior. And I want to share a very strategic way of doing this, which comes from the coaching group Vital Smarts. They've got a book called Crucial Conversations, and they use these 5 steps with all sorts of problematic situations where you need to have a conversation, particularly with teenagers. It's very successful because often we get frustrated with a teen, and it's very easy to dump your rage on a teenager, especially when you've done a lot for them for the first part of their lives. And now when they're a teenager, you might want them to start contributing. So you start to go, what do I do to get this teenager to do something? So in Crucial Conversations, what they suggest is to start by connecting to your heart, which, believe me, I know it's very difficult when you're frustrated. So the 5 steps are to eventually get you to connect more to your heart.
Yes, especially when you're in the heat of the moment and you're angry. You have to walk away and not confront your teenager until you've calmed down. And that is very hard, whether you have to go take a walk or just go into your room and shut the door and do some breathing exercises. Just get yourself calm before you walk in there and talk about what's happening or what happened, the behavior. It's easy to get caught up in the moment of being upset or angry or disappointed, but it's really better if you can calm yourself down before you do the actual discussion. Believe me, I've done the opposite and it wasn't the best thing.
Yeah, and if you do explode, it's also about owning to your teen and just saying, look, I'm sorry that I exploded, and this is how we're going to move forward.
Right. And as a parent, you do need to say sorry at times. You do need to apologize when you are in the wrong. And that teaches your children also that it's okay to say sorry. It's okay to be a human being and be compassionate and kind. We don't really hear that anymore. People don't say sorry when they've done something wrong to somebody else. And it starts at home. And if a parent can say, I don't like the behavior, but I love you, and I'm sorry for my approach or how I came across after it's all over, I think the child or the teenager will know that that wasn't how you wanted it to end, wasn't how you wanted the conversation to happen, or you want so much more in the relationship than something like that.
Yeah. And we're going to do a future podcast on making mistakes and getting over it. Culture is raised that mistakes are a bad thing, and they're actually quite human. I hope during these times of the COVID experience that we're starting to learn that mistakes are a part of learning to be better. We're seeing countries and governments make them, so we in our families need to learn as well how to recover from our mistakes. So the 5 steps from Crucial Conversations are to help you get through some of that steam that you might be feeling from not having your team being so cooperative, or actually from you not being able to empathize with your team's universe.
And it's so important, like you said, Angela, start with your heart. You need to get yourself centered and calm before you walk in there, because you don't know how your teen is going to react to you. So it's real important to do your number one. Start with your heart.
And the next 4 steps after you've started with your heart will be questions. So you can journal on these, and the writing will help you actually externalize some of the answers to the questions. It's important to write because will help you to get some of the energy out of your body, especially if there's emotions around these behaviors that you wish to be different for you and your teenager. So step 2, the question is to ask yourself, what do you want for the relationship? And in this step, just freestyle your writing. What do you want for the relationship? Not the behavior. What do you want for the relationship around this situation, this behavior? What do you want for the relationship? Step 3 is to ask yourself, what do you want for your teen, your teenager? What do you want for your teen, the other person? What do you want for them? And step 4, you ask yourself, what do you want for you personally? What do you want for you? So by step 4, in step 2, you've covered the relationship. In step 3, you've covered the other person or the teenager. In step 4, you get to yourself. What do you want for you? And the final question, you ask, what is the greatest possible outcome for the relationship around this situation or this boundary that you're creating? What is the greatest possible outcome for the relationship? So in the 4 questions from step 2 to 5, what we're doing is we're getting you to consider the relationship. Usually in step 2, we still might be in our emotions, but by the time we then start to look at the other person, what we want for them and what we want for ourselves, you're starting to see the relationship from different points of view. And by the last question, what could be the greatest possible outcome? We're trying to weave together everything that we want from our point of view, from the teenager's point of view, and from the best possible outcome for this relationship. By the time we've asked these questions several times, getting to different layers of what's possible, so you can incorporate all of those different insights into the greatest possible outcome for the relationship. And the questions are key here, because that's how you're going to then be able to communicate with your teenager from a much more holistic point of view, because you've actually started to think about the situation and the boundary that you would like everybody to get involved with. Rather than just, in my day, my parents would say, make sure before mum would go to work, don't forget to take in the washing. Which is really, I think it's simple, it made sense now when I think about it. I completely understand my mother. But at the time, I just wanted to watch TV and have fun while she was at work. I didn't get it. I didn't care. But once you go through this question process, you can start to really communicate in a different way to the teenager, and you can come from your heart, and the teenager will feel that. They won't feel so much that you're just wanting them to do something that you want them to do. And the key is really going back to when you do that conversation about, say, for example, taking in the washing or doing a chore. If you're going to come up with a boundary and a consequence to the child or teenager not enforcing, respecting that boundary, you do need to see it as a deal. Like going back to what Patti was sharing earlier about if the washing is not done or taking in of the clothes, then you lose one day of your gaming device. There has to be some sort of exchange or a deal. And that's when we begin to then treat the teen as an equal. It's a deal here that we've got. In the book Crucial Conversations, they give an example of a parent with a teen who uses the car. So if the teen does not have the car back by 11 o'clock at night, then the keys of the car get taken away. It's that simple. And that's the exchange. Then they start to begin to realise that with every boundary, this is a deal. It's a relationship, and we have an agreement, and this is a deal that we're setting up as part of the agreement. Did you have any other thoughts on that, Patti?
Yeah, I think asking questions and finding out from the teenager what was their thought process of why they broke the boundary, and them talk it through themselves. Sometimes they'll even say, well, I know that I'm going to have consequences for this. And they might actually be the ones that put a harsher consequence than what you were thinking of doing, because they know that they broke the boundary and they need to be accountable.
Wow. So that's actually encouraging them to be their own assessor of their behaviour. They can evaluate their behaviour.
Yes. They can evaluate it and think, okay, what my consequences are going to be, and then you talk about it. And sometimes if it's up to them, they're much harsher on themselves than you would have been.
And they actually want that challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk these days about this generation or that generation being more entitled. But partly it's because we're not giving those generations or those people opportunities to evaluate themselves and to set bars or goals or consequences of their behaviours. And interesting that sometimes they may be harsher than we might be.
Right. Yeah.
And
It is interesting.
Yeah, it's very different to my parents, who were quite strict but weren't good at enforcing consequences. But their conditional love was quite scary, and I did a lot of things out of fear, and then I didn't do things out of resentment.
Mm-hmm.
So if we talk to teens and give them the responsibility of creating their own consequences, it's very similar to some gaming apps actually, where they lose points if they don't achieve certain outcomes, and we're teaching them that they can actually create those consequences, which is also different to school, where the teacher is the one that marks their behaviour. They actually start to assess their own behaviour, and as a parent you can engage in a conversation about their self-evaluation.
Right.
So touching on the differences between generations, there are some things that might be different to what teens are experiencing these days, Patti. What do you see as what's similar 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 problems and different problems that teenagers maybe experience to what we experienced.
Well, different. When we were young, we didn't have the internet or online gaming addiction. And right now, that is one of the things that our children and teenagers and us adults are facing right now is the internet and online gaming. It's important for parents to realize how much time their children are online and when they are engaged in social networking, gaming, posting videos and pictures, texting, etc. They could think that they're on there for an hour, but they've been on there for 6 hours. Trying to control your teenagers' online use, such as gaming, often leads to conflict and an increased desire for the children to use the devices even more. This is the time for an agreement online, using your boundary conversations between the parent and the teenagers or the children's online usage. So, as a family, you come up with an agreeable, okay, you can do 2 hours of online activity. You can play your video game for an hour before bedtime and stick to those rules and be consistent. Now, another thing is online bullying, cyberbullying. We didn't have that when we were kids. We did have in-person bullying, but we didn't have the online bullying because it wasn't invented yet. However, we did have the person bullying us at school or in the neighborhood, but cyberbullying or online bullying has become a problem, and it's increasing among preteens, teenagers, and college-age students. And the statistics say that girls are more likely than boys to be cyberbullies, which I found very surprising, not knowing much about cyberbullying, but that happens.
Yeah, we did a previous podcast, Patti, called Beyond Comparison, where we looked at social media as a part of modern culture that's forcing us to compare too much. And we get lost in that comparison and we forget how to go beyond that, or we've lost the ability to go beyond comparing ourselves. And in that podcast, I talk about how to use your mind more creatively, the comparative part of the mind. And unfortunately, because teenage girls are much more into comparing through the social media and through the visual ones like Instagram and TikTok too, I think, they get stuck in the image more than boys. Boys traditionally are much more into gaming, and they tend to be more cooperative because the games themselves are about working in teams, whereas the girls tend to go into more comparing of the visual and the image of the girl or the self, and then they go into being bitches and really awful, and the negative
To each other.
aspect. Yeah, so unfortunately that's why the girls are into more of that bullying.
Yeah, and cyberbullying has been linked to leading to suicide of the victims being bullied. It is important for children and teens to feel comfortable to come to their parents and tell them what's going on. And according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention leading cause of death reports in 2017, it stated that suicide was the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States, and suicide was the second leading cause of death among individuals between 10 and 34. This just breaks my heart. I can't even imagine somebody so young taking their life. It just totally breaks my heart. And then the fourth leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 35 and 54.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking that it's such a young age, that it's such a high cause of death. And there's some research as well in Australia where unfortunately if suicide happens within a community, and this has also happened in Silicon Valley with young people, it becomes an option for the young mind. It does also for older people as well. But if you think about a younger person's mind, they're going to look at what their peers are doing. So unfortunately, if your peers are doing suicide, it can spread amongst other teens. So it's very important, if your teenager has a friend, or they know someone who's not a friend that's committed suicide, that you have some conversation about that with them, so you can prevent the peer spread of doing
Yes.
that.
Yes, it needs to be talked about. It's something that used to be taboo
Yeah.
and people didn't talk about, but it needs to be talked about because it's skyrocketing, and we need, and it needs to be stopped. Also, in the statistics, it said young males are much more likely to commit suicide than their female peers, but females, adolescents, are more likely to attempt suicide than their male peers. And this is a cry out for help. For more information about suicide prevention, check out the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline website or call 1-800-273-8255. We will have the National Suicide Prevention website link in our show notes.
And for those in Australia, there's an excellent website for teens, for youth and their parents. So this is youth, is specifically teenagers and up, but it may be good for people who are younger than 12 as well. If you want to go to reachout.com, it's reachout.com. It's an excellent site for international use as well, not just Australians. It has excellent examples of topics around youth issues and how to talk to your youth. You can go to the website if you are a teenager, so they can use it independently of the adults. And as a parent, you can go to the website and look at, how do I talk about certain topics with my child? And it's got a lot of free advice. And also there's a hotline on the reachout.com website if you want to get help. And in Australia, there's also lifeline.org.au. There's a free hotline on lifeline.org.au.
If you're feeling sad or contemplating suicide, please reach out. Reach out to others. Reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Line. They have people that deal with this topic and can help.
Yeah, it's an important effort for those in isolation, if you're during isolation for the virus, to really start to take advantage of your time at home to use the internet to get help, because some people are stuck in situations that may not be healthy for you, but there are so many online resources these days, and reachout.org has really inspired me for their information that's available.
And also use Angela's 5 steps. Anytime that you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious or in conflict, it will make a difference. I wanted to do a shout out to Angela because she has a new podcast, and it's called The Love Oracle, and it's on Anchor. Check it out, and we'll have it in the show notes as well.
Thanks, Patti. Thank you for listening to Building Better Relationships with Angela and Patti. We really value your feedback.